Someone pressed record without permission. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet decision. A finger moved, a red light appeared, and in that moment, something crossed a line that had existed for a very long time. What was captured wasn't meant for archives. It wasn't meant for public memory. It wasn't even meant to last. And yet, it did. For a brief window of time, something hidden was seen. And once it was seen, everything changed. Before we talk about what was recorded, we need to talk about silence. Because silence existed there long before the camera ever arrived. This place had a history of being left alone. Not abandoned, not forgotten. Left alone. It appeared on maps but without detail. Referenced in reports but never described. Mentioned but never explained. People worked around it, built near it, passed by it, and quietly agreed not to look too closely. There was no official warning sign that said, "Do not enter." No dramatic fence. No armed guard standing watch. Just an understanding. Those who knew, knew. Those who didn't, weren't supposed to ask. And for a long time, no one did. Until someone decided to record. The footage itself doesn't scream danger. That's what makes it unsettling. There are no alarms, no sudden collapse, no visible threat, just a space, still, heavy, older than the people standing inside it. The camera moves slowly, almost respectfully. You can hear breathing. You can hear footsteps echoing against stone. At first it looks like documentation. Routine. Harmless. But then something changes. Not in the footage. In the behavior of the people behind it. The camera hesitates. Lingers where it shouldn't. Focuses on details that were never meant to be preserved. And someone quietly says, "Stop recording." The camera doesn't stop. That moment matters more than anything else in this story. Because what followed had nothing to do with what was visible, and everything to do with what had just been captured. Within hours, access was restricted. Within days, the area was sealed. Within weeks, references disappeared. And the recording itself became a problem. Not because it showed something monstrous, but because it showed something real. The kind of real that creates consequences. Official explanations came quickly. Too quickly. They spoke of safety protocols, of conservation, of miscommunication. They said the recording was incomplete, misleading, taken out of context. They said nothing unusual had occurred, but actions tell stories that statements never will. The people involved were reassigned. The site was reclassified. Future work was postponed indefinitely. And the recording was never acknowledged again. Except, it didn't vanish. Because once something is recorded, it exists in a way silence never can erase. Copies were made, fragments shared, descriptions passed quietly from one person to another, and with each retelling, the same question surfaced. Why was recording this such a problem? To understand that, you have to understand what documentation does. Documentation freezes moments that were meant to pass. It turns temporary access into permanent evidence. It removes deniability. Before the camera, there was flexibility. After the camera, there was proof. And proof is dangerous when it contradicts agreements that were never written down. The place itself had always existed in a fragile balance. Between history and belief. Between science and identity. Between curiosity and restraint. As long as nothing was captured, that balance held. The recording disrupted it. What the camera saw wasn't dramatic, but it was specific. Details that shouldn't have been there, arrangements that raised questions, marks that suggested intention rather than accident. Nothing that could be explained in a headline. Everything that could complicate a narrative. And that's when the tone changed. Meetings were held without minutes. Emails were sent without attachments. Instructions were delivered verbally. The language shifted from discovery to damage control. Not because something dangerous had been found, but because something difficult had been documented. There is a difference. Danger can be contained. Difficulty spreads, especially when the difficulty challenges long-standing assumptions. The official position remained calm, measured, professional. But behind closed doors, urgency replaced curiosity. The question was no longer, what is this? It became, who has the footage? Because footage moves faster than explanations. And once people outside the original circle start asking questions, control disappears. What makes this case unusual is not that access was restricted. That happens often. What makes it unusual is how fast it happened and how complete it was. Almost as if there had always been a plan for this exact scenario, as if everyone knew what to do. The moment recording occurred, that suggests precedent. Which raises another question. Had this happened before? There are whispers of similar incidents, moments when cameras were discouraged, when photographs were lost, when notes were revised after the fact. Nothing provable, nothing official, just patterns. Patterns that suggest documentation itself was the real boundary. You could enter, you could observe, but you could not preserve. Once preservation happened, the rules changed. And the person who pressed record discovered that too late. They weren't punished publicly, there was no scandal, just quiet removal from the conversation. Invitations stopped. Access ended. Names faded from reports. A professional disappearance. And the recording? It exists in fragments now. Never released in full. Never authenticated publicly. But enough people have seen enough pieces to agree on one thing. It shows something that was never supposed to be fixed in time. And time is the enemy of ambiguity. As long as something lives only in memory, it can be reshaped, reinterpreted, softened. A recording doesn't forget. It doesn't adapt. It just stays. Which brings us to the uncomfortable part of the story. What if the problem wasn't what was found, but when it was found? What if the documentation arrived before everyone was ready to explain it? There are discoveries that require decades to contextualize. Some truths destabilize when introduced too early, and some things, rightly or wrongly, are considered safer when left undocumented, not erased, not denied, just not recorded. Because once recorded, ownership changes. It no longer belongs to the place, or the institution, or the tradition. It belongs to whoever sees it. That loss of control is what triggered the response, the sealing, the silence, the sudden professionalism. They weren't reacting to danger. They were reacting to permanence, and permanence has consequences. Today, the site remains inaccessible, officially under review, unofficially avoided. The recording circulates quietly, never openly referenced, never fully denied. And the person who recorded it, they learned something most people never do. That sometimes the line isn't marked, sometimes the rule isn't written, and sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is press record at the wrong moment. Because once you document something that was meant to remain flexible, you force the world to deal with it. And not every system is built to survive that. If this story feels incomplete, that's because it is. The final explanation never came. The footage was never released. The questions remain unanswered. But the reaction told us everything we needed to know. Someone recorded this, and they shouldn't have, because some things aren't dangerous until they're preserved, and some places aren't forbidden until someone decides to remember them forever.